Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Keys to AWS Optimization. We are excited to get into this topic today, which is all about how to use Amazon Q to refactor your code. Yes, it's another one of our technical AI featured episodes this season. We've had a bunch of those. And I have Vidya with me to do the demo, which is super exciting. And we're going to get into what all those things mean, who Vidya is in a moment. But as we always start, Vidya, have you had a frugal week or a splurgy week?
I've had a splurgy week, definitely.
Ooh,
Yeah.
tell me
Well,
more.
splurgy in terms of social splurge. The weather's been good here in New York, and I've had lots of people come over with a nice backyard. That's rare in New York City. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's
Oh
been
my
really.
goodness. That's amazing, especially if it's getting sunny over there, then a backyard space is going to be ideal for New York. I wish I had a backyard in London. That's also hard pressed by. I know what you mean. I've had a bit of a splurgy week at the end of last week. I hinted this before I left for FinOps X. I went to Disneyland in LA before FinOps X last week, which was amazing. I got to go on the Guardians ride, which was the best. But yeah, so super fun time. And guys, if you saw me at FinOps X, thank you so much for coming up and saying hi to all the people that came to my session. If you could check out the YouTube channel, we have a recording of the session as well. But thank you so much for coming. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I promised my other half I wouldn't get any more swag. And as you can see, I love some hats, but unfortunately, the hats were just too good. And so I've got, 5 more hats to add to my collection, including the custom FinOps Foundation one. It's an obsession. I promised I wouldn't bring back junk, but it's actually decoration. So I think it's fine.
That's amazing. I need one of those.
Yeah, exactly. It's the hats are just like, I don't even wear them. I started wearing one. Shout out to Rem who gave me a good hat. That's the one I'm wearing at the moment. But thank you so much for joining. Let's get into the show proper. So welcome everyone to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock your spend at AWS. My name is Steph Gooch. I'm an SA advocate here to help you on your FinOps journeys. And with me is Vidya. Let's get into your origin story, Vidya. If you want to share, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Vidya Thangirala. I'm a principal solutions architect at AWS, and I focus on developer experience. And part of that is looking at the entire developer ecosystem, from everything from coding to deployment, and how to improve that. But also lately, as everyone knows, with AI, I've been getting deeper into learning about AI and how that impacts software development in general, but also how that developer experience is going to evolve.
Amazing. And so we're going to talk a bit about Q and refactoring code today, which is something that, like, the power of Q, we've seen a lot of announcements with it. And if you haven't gone and check it out, do. But we are going to be demoing what it looks like in the console and the CLI to do this with a project and deployment that video has made before. Before we get into that, let's say hi to see some comments, such as hi, oh, yay, Disneyland. Yes, I loved it. Did you get any selfie requests? I did get selfie requests when I was at FinOps X. I love it. I'm still in that vibe. If people want to come and take a picture of me, I'm going to say yes and hi all from people. So thank you so much for joining that. But let's talk about before we get into Q, actually, I think we need to explain as well for people like me what we mean by refactoring code. What is this? And we'll go into in a second why and what kind of things it involve. But just at a high level, what is this kind of concept?
Yeah, it's. I'm glad you asked that, because it's an umbrella term, typically
Right.
code optimization and refactoring. And what that means, the technical definition is that refactor means you're improving code without changing the external behavior. So, and code migration is one of them. So that's a basic. It's by a really well-known author, Martin Fowler. He coined that definition, and it's generally widely used as what refactoring means. And he's written a very excellent book on it as well.
Oh, okay, good plug. And so specifically today, we're going to be talking about Java to Rust, right?
Yeah.
What
Yes.
would it be? Yeah, go on, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was going to just share. So within refactoring, you could have multiple areas. So typically, refactoring could include you're upgrading to a newer version of your own programming language. Let's say an older version of Python, you want to upgrade, so you could do that. You could also be modernizing frameworks. So let's say you had an older version of a Java framework and you wanted to upgrade that. So it's essentially, you're not changing the functional behavior of the application or system itself, but you're optimizing or enhancing the non-functional requirements. And so migrating languages between, say, Java to Rust is a good example of refactoring, where you're taking this application and you're writing it in maybe a more performant language.
Right. Okay. And Rust is a more performant language, I guess, from what you're saying.
Yeah, so it's not, so Rust, this is for the sake of this demo, I kept it from Java to Rust. It could be anything. So Rust, where Rust shines in are some very specific examples would be if you needed very high performance systems, say like a gaming system or a financial trading system, or even a cloud infrastructure system, like our Cloudflare is written in Rust. So where you need microsecond latency, you can, so not all systems need it, but some systems do. So, and let's say you had a group of developers that built that maybe 5-10 years ago and it's stable, but you wanted to now, the performance is degrading or you're adding new features and you're realizing that you need to move it to a more performant language. So that's just an example.
Right, especially for things like legacy applications and things like that. That's the kind of situation, right? That makes sense. And it sounds like it's a large overhead to kind of do this, but I understand that it's probably a reason is that you want to move to that. But any other reasons why people might want to refactor their code?
Yeah, so one could be performance. The other is general maintainability and security. So let's say if your application is using external dependencies that either you have security vulnerabilities or you want to upgrade to the latest version. So and that also factors into maintainability, but also reliability. As you're adding new features, you want to make sure that the system's reliable. So these are all the non-functional requirements that it benefits. And so the key there is that you need to make sure that it's the behavior doesn't change, but you are enhancing or optimizing the system in some way.
Brilliant. And I love that we've chosen this Rust today, but as you mentioned, lots of other things that you could do. Chat, I'd love to know, what do people write in? I write everything in Python. That's my but that's because that's what I learned in. So let me know in the chat, what kind of code do you write in? I see some people are putting in things like Python for me as well, which is, so yeah, let me know in the chat what you like to write in. Okay, last question on this kind of thing is, what are the risks involved when it comes to refactoring code?
Yeah, so the biggest risk is accidental behavioral change. So if you're rewriting a piece of it, and if you're writing it even in the same language, so let's say you're upgrading from an older version of Python to new, and there's other dependencies and backward compatibility, so you might accidentally change the behavior. And so for that, to ensure that that doesn't happen, you need to ensure you have comprehensive testing. So that's sort of what is considered part of a fast feedback loop, that your developers are able to get that feedback if they're changing something, that it's not accidentally changing behavior across the system or somewhere else. And the biggest reason people don't do it is just the time and resource investment that's required. You need development teams that, say, in this case, if you're migrating to a new language, you need to have development teams that understand both paradigms of of two languages, let's say in Java and Rust, and they're very different in how you write the syntax, but also conceptually the idioms and the best practices.
Right. Okay. And I guess the thing that's going to be bridging this conversation into the area of Q is the time, right? So this, I mean, I can just imagine, even as a developer, when I used to be doing more infrastructure as code, or even if I chose an application that, let's do it simple, let's do it things that I know, moving from CloudFormation to Terraform as a very simple version of that, I just am like, oh, because I already have it, it works. To migrate everything to a different thing, let alone a different, like, totally programming language that has so much more nuance to it, I bet it would take normally a long time, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's the intensity. When we do the demo, I'll get into sort of what a typical migration plan would look like for something like this. And it could take weeks to months, depending on the complexity of the application. And you have to have teams that understand both languages, and they're not breaking anything when they're doing the migration. So it is a very complex and time-consuming and costly effort. And this is where AI shines. I really do think this is where AI really shines, where it sort of helps you, because it understands both programming languages paradigm, and it helps you. Let's say you're new to Rust. For me, I'm used to be a Java developer, and Rust was new. But for me to be able to pick up Rust quickly was using even just learning a new language and being able to understand what the pitfalls are and what the challenges are was really helpful for me.
Yeah. And it's just that faster, like you said, faster feedback loop. I love the idea of you having something. And also, if you have something you already have that you know and you want to convert it, it kind of has that thing. It's like how we learn normal language, isn't it? We've actually had a funny comment in the chat, which is lately I've been writing my code in English.
That's a great comment.
I never, yeah, but does everyone? I don't even know. I guess so. And are there different versions of language code? Am I being really blonde right now?
Oh,
Like, would you have like French Java? No, I'm being an idiot.
oh no, you wouldn't. I mean, the comments could be in it, but yeah,
oh yeah, of course, yeah. Okay, guys, Steph is being blonde. So moving
it
on.
should be more inclusive. I agree with
Yeah,
you.
we should maybe it could do that. That's what gets some queuing. So let's talk a little bit about Q Developer. So if folks haven't heard of Q Developer, then let's give them a brief summary from you, what it is and what it is generally.
Yeah, so Q Developer, it was launched in 2023, and it's an AI coding companion. So what it is it's an AI assistant. So it's almost like you have a pair programmer with you, and it's primarily used by software developers, but it's also used by DevOps engineers, or you've got cloud architects, IT teams, and system administrators. Anyone that's sort of touching a code base could really benefit from Q Developer. And specifically with Q, what we have, because it's an AWS service, it's trained on over 17 years of AWS data. So that's where it shines in terms of providing AWS service guidance and integrations. As a developer, I might not know all my resources, and I might not understand all the AWS infrastructure best practices. So I can ask you to help me figure that out. And in terms of deployment, I might be good in my development role, but in terms of deployment, I might have less knowledge about it. And that's why Q, I think, really shines in putting that entire DevOps piece together.
Yeah. And what makes it different than the Q that we've seen in the console recently?
Yeah, so the Q console is mainly focused on AWS service management and operations. So while Q Developer is specifically built for software development tasks and workflow. So Q Developer has a deeper understanding of your code base and any of the development practices and specific, say, languages that you're using. And the Q console is better for AWS service guidance.
Okay, brilliant. So check out, if you haven't checked out either of them, don't go anywhere yet. Obviously, wait till the end of the video, but try out the one in the console. We also just released cost optimization hub integrations to Q in the console, so you can actually start asking questions about that. Also, guys, in the comments, if you're watching this on VOD or if you're watching this live, let us know if from seeing this show, you go and try these things out. I'd love to know if we start kind of kicking those people trying stuff. I love that idea when it comes to that. So when it comes to setup, we have a very handy blog on how to set it up, but anything people should know about the setup process for it?
I think that, yeah, I could maybe, the setup process is fairly straightforward. I could show quickly
Yeah,
how
do you want to show it?
setup? Yeah, let me.
While you're doing that, we've got a couple of questions or comments in the chat. It's just, I feel that Code Whisperer was a better name considering everything with a Q is Q now. I know what you mean. That's the old name, but we've also, I think it's grown so much. If you look at the different capabilities that we have for Q, especially with Pro and Dev, it was quite a cool name. Although when it was Code Whisperer, I kept being really sassy about it. I'd be like, it doesn't understand me. And now I'm like, Q, I love you. So it just depends on what I'm looking at. But yes, anything else in the chat? Any questions, comments, please put them back in the chat. We've had one about, do you have a blog on improving logging for better debugging? We'll have our secret Richard, if you wouldn't mind having a look for that and sharing it in the chat, that would be helpful. Ready to showcase the sharing?
Yeah, so are you able to see my window here? This is my
there we
ID.
Go, yes.
I'm using VS Code. So it's fairly straightforward. If you wanted to, I've already logged in for the sake of this demo, so I don't want to spend time, but you go into your extensions. So there's within VS Code, this is specific to that, but you could use any IDE. You go into the extensions and you type in Amazon Q. Let me see if I could. And you'll see Amazon Q here, and you can install that essentially. So I've already got that installed. And then once you install, you can log in through either your builder ID or I've logged in through my the IAM Identity Center. And that's essentially it. And then it gives you a screenshot to just not screenshot, a screen to trust the extension.
Yeah.
And that essentially gives you Q. You've got Q installed once you authenticate yourself either through a builder ID or IAM.
The thing I would note about the identity center stuff is make sure you're connecting to the right account. There's like a whole setup process for it. The blog I'll link also in the show notes of the video is very helpful with this. I'll stick it up on the screen as well. It's in the community hub, very long, but if you search for it for just Q setup, it is very handy. And pricing. Now, I just wanted to touch on pricing because I've had a few people ask me this. Two things to note. So it's a flat fee for pricing, depending on if you do Pro or the dev one. Very similar to how we do quick site license pricing. The only thing to note is if you go over 4,000 lines of Java code, is that the one? Yes, I feel like in my head. Of what is it though? That it's not just writing Java. What's the thing? Oh shoot. Do you remember what the change is? Let me see.
You mean
what's the Java thing? Oh, it keeps.
It's the compute, right? How much it's computing. It's not specifically the.
Let's have a look. Explore pricing. I'll put the link in the chat. Here we go. Oh yeah. For Amazon Q developer, transformation capabilities for Java upgrades. Then over 4,000 lines of code, it's an extra 0.03 per line code submitted. So a specific use case. So just be mindful, if you are doing a lot of that, whatever that is, then there will be an extra fee. So just be mindful of it. But I don't think in Cost Explorer you can see Q per license at the moment. You can just see the fee. So if you want to check Identity Center, like video said, is where you can see all the users, and that's kind of the flat free. Okay. Shall we get into the demo good and proper?
Yeah. Did you want me to, maybe I could do a quick overview of, a quick overview of just some of the features of.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's go into Q. I'll bring your screen. There we go.
So I've got this open up. I have a Java repository open here, but essentially, if you wanted to go into Q and start chatting with Q, you could.
Just your screen. So
this is going to be.
It stopped. Right. So today I'm going to warn ahead in case you have any more technical issues. We're having something weird happen with video share screen. So if anything goes wrong, then bear with us, guys.
Yes. And you could also try this along as you're going. You could just listen to what I'm saying. So so you've got to, you'll see this icon. Once you have it installed, you see an icon on your left-hand side called Amazon Q. You can click on that. And it's what that does, it opens up a chat window. And this is where you're able to talk to Amazon Q developer, which uses Bedrock, which runs on Bedrock, and it's got it's got agents in it. So let me just quickly show you what you can do with this. So let's say I ask a question here. Let's say I want to know. I have a Java code base here that's open. I'll just open this up to show everyone what I've got. A main. I've got some control over MVC. I'm going to ask it to explain to me what this project is about. Let's say I'm a new developer. I've been tasked to migrate Java to Rust. I need to first understand what Java is doing.
This kind of stuff is, I'm using Q a lot to start writing code for me, and also, like you said, understanding, because the README feature that you can actually get just to write your README is a step I think people don't spend time doing enough, especially like when you have multiple people working on a project. So you can get it. That's the boring thing, right? Writing a README is not really fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the README is not fun. So this is part of what it does is, and I'll show you how we create that later, where it'll save months of time in terms of creating documentation for projects, and especially if it's a project you've inherited, and you need to understand what it does, and you have to write READMEs and indications. So it's what it's doing here. Hopefully you can see on the screen. It's going through the entire, so it's picked out what files it needs to look at, and it's picked out, say, 5 files, and this we already have, and it knows what classes to look at and what files, and obviously it's picked a README file, and it's picked the POM file, which is for deployment, and it's picked an application. So I'll get into what this application does in a bit, but it's giving me a project overview, what it is. It's a web-based word guessing game, and it's going into the project structure. It's telling me what the structure itself looks like. And this is all, again, all I've done is loaded my project, and it's able to tell me what the structure looks like. And it also tells me what resources, these are static resources that's being used for this web application, and what tests I've created in here. And I've created a migration project before as a sample, but it tells me what technology that it uses, and also explains the development setup. So it's a Java 8. This requires Java 8, a JDK 1.8. It's a Maven project, and the framework is Spring Boot. So all of this, it also tells me how to run it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So sometimes that is what you want to know. Honestly, I feel like the amount of times I get a GitHub repo that's just like, here you go, and I'm like, well, how do you use the thing? Like, just using Q to run over it is so helpful.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe I'll go into. I have the application running here, so let me share my screen.
So we could just see your Visual Studio. So yeah, should reshare it. And while you're bringing that up, I've had John's commented, having it explain and walk me through my own project is gold. It's amazing. And you're saying inherited yet, or just forgotten my own mess of code. That is more me. Is like I've forgotten what I was doing, and this has helped me recover it. But yeah, if you want to share whenever you're ready. And questions, comments in the chat. I think there's a couple more that I'll come back to, guys. All right, let's have a look at this application that you've made for us.
So can you see the application? Yeah. So I'll walk you through what, hopefully you can see the screen on the left here. So I've asked to explain what it does, and it's telling me it's a keyword application. Essentially what this is that it's sort of like a Wordle application. And we'll be using, this is the application we'll be migrating. It's written in Java. We're going to be migrating this to Rust. So it's always nice to see what the application does. So it's a Wordle application, and it's a guessing game type application. So you get 5 attempts to guess, and you have to pick any 6 letter word. And after each guess, you get a feedback. Either you've indicated whether there's a correct letter there, or it could be in the wrong position, or the letter is not present at all.
Okay.
Do you want to play this game?
Yeah. Okay. FinOps. Oh, step. Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah. Let's FinOps.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Imra's never tried Wordle actually. So what's right? NO?
Yeah, it looks like there's at least NO in there. And I could, just to make this quicker, let me make it easier for everyone. So I've got this running on this. So I can tell, because I don't know what it's running, right? So.
Oh, wait, bring it back up again. Sorry.
Oh.
The game is going to be how many times it actually crashes your screen.
So I've got this running here. So I'm looking to see. So this is the word Bronco. Can you see the?
Oh, do you know that was my next guess?
Was that so? Do you want to guess it? Bronco. So let's.
Bronco?
There we go. You got it.
Yay!
So this is essentially so just for everyone to understand what it does. So this is what the game does. So now we're going to convert this into Rust. But to do that, I need to, let me go back into, it's really important to understand how Amazon Q actually does code migration. So I've created a mermaid file here, which will help visualize.
A mermaid file? Why is it called a mermaid file? What a fascinating name. Is it?
Yeah. I love it though. It's just so much easier to have it go through, be able to just have everything in one repository.
Yeah.
So you're able to see my screen here, right?
Yes.
Let me do full screen here, so it's a little bit better.
Perfect.
Yeah. So what it's doing is, there's 4 steps to when we're looking at. It's really important to understand before you start using AI, like what it's doing in the background, right? So this sort of helps you understand the sophistication and why it's so helpful. So to understand this language migration process, it essentially goes through 4 steps. First is the code analysis. It needs to understand your current project. So in this case, we have a Java project. What it's going to do is it's going to analyze the structures, the dependencies, and any functionality that, even the actual business logic and any API functionality that you might need. And this is for example, it'll understand, so if you're using Spring Boot as a framework, it understands it needs that. And if you're using different types of classes, it'll understand the logic, the business logic of where the classes are and what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the next step is conceptual mapping. It goes into, and this is where I think it really shines, where it's not really just doing syntax to syntax migration. It's actually translating the Java concepts into Rust equivalent. So it's translating, so Q is able to translate between programming paradigms. So this is why I mentioned earlier, if you're doing this manually, you would have to understand both languages, and you have to understand how both languages work, and not just the syntax, but the philosophy behind it, right? To be able to create create an application in a new language. So that's where it works really well. And then so in this case, I'll just give a simple example. In Java, we use something called classes. And in Rust, the equivalent of that is structs. So it will know to migrate that from classes to struct. And how, say, memory management is a really key factor, is what makes Rust more performative, say, compared to an equivalent Java application, is Java does something called garbage collection in terms of how it manages memory, and Rust has a model called ownership model, where it ends up becoming more performative. And I'll show you some benchmarks on what that looks like. So this is where Amazon Q is able to understand the two languages, understand how it works, not just from a syntax, but the entire paradigm. And it's able to translate that for us.
Brilliant.
And then the next step is a fun step, which is what we think of, which is the code generation. And so here it's including, it looks at the initial structure of the application, it creates the entire structure, and it also creates the code for it. But the key here, because we're refactoring, is maintaining the same functionality of the code. So it also understands what the business logic is and what the functionality is. So here, and it also looks at any APIs, and if we have tests, it'll also migrate that for us.
Brilliant.
And the last step is the adaptation. And this is to make it, you don't just want to move from one language to another, you also want to make it production ready. And so there's best practices that it applies, that's specific to Rust, to make sure that it functions. So for example, it uses a Rust format compliance as a style guideline, and it already knows to use that when it's migrating and it's when it's going through the adaptation process. So so something like this, the key here is that, so it's not just translating syntax, but it's actually going through the entire paradigm of the two different programming languages and migrating that. And this would normally take months for manual migration. And I'll show you an example of a proof of concept that we could do within this hour.
Perfect. And someone's commented, this is a great process chart. How did you make the mermaid chart?
So Mermaid is an external tool. So this is the chart itself looks like this. So it's essentially it could also have it as a markup, and it'll understand it. So I created it based on, the first step here. If I go up here, so kind of had an idea. I drew this on what I knew what the workflow was supposed to be like, and this is the first step, and these are the things that are happening in it. So it's fairly straightforward. It's an easy. It's sort of almost like a YAML file.
Yeah.
And
interesting. No, that's really cool. Yeah. Okay, right. So that's how the base of how we use Q to do this kind of thing. And we know why refactoring is important. We've seen the word game. So let's have a look at, in a second, how we actually do the refactor. Before we do, if you want to share your screen and get it ready, someone has asked in the chat, if you use Claude Sonnet, how much does this affect pricing? So with Q, you can't choose the underlying model, but if you're using like Bedrock, then it does. So I'm just going to, while you share your screen, I'm going to bring up just the pricing page for people to see and understand pricing, because I think it's sometimes really important. So if you go onto the pricing page of Bedrock, when you go down here, you can see all the different kind of parties who own the models. So if you look at how much Sonnet is, and there's obviously different types of Sonnet, this is like 003. If you change it to something like Amazon, the pricing is very different, but you have to use the model that is for your use case. So if you need something like Sonnet, I've had very good things about, I've used it, like it, but if you need kind of a lightweight processor, then maybe check out these. It will dramatically affect your pricing. Good question, though. Love it. Okay, let's get back on to the demo. So if you want to share your screen, then we can start to refactor some code.
Yes, so let me share. Might be easier if I just share this window. Let me know.
All right. Cool. So this is just your CLI, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to share the CLI for now, and I'll switch to, because it might be a little bit easier.
And what's the difference? Well, you can we'll obviously see it different, but when do you use the CLI versus the IDE kind of chat feature?
Yeah, so the CLI is typically so the CLI recently we've had a agentic. It's been powered by agents, so it's just quickly. It's got Bedrock in the background, and it's using Claude 3.7 as default. You could also use 4. So what it's really good at is it streamlines the development process without needing to switch from your IDE to terminal. So a lot of power users and a lot of, if you're, say for example, for me, I do a lot of coding in the IDE, but I have Docker and I have Git and all of that also installed in IDE, but I always switch to my CLI to create the workflows. So as the CLI does, the backend is Amazon Q developer. So it's able to read and write files locally. You can query AWS resources here. It writes code for you. It does everything that it does in the IDE. And it also helps with automatic debugging. It's very efficient in task completion, but it also does other things like, let's say, if I have to run tests, that's typically I'd have to go into my CLI to run additional tests. And I'm able to do that without having to switch to my IDE. So, so the way I look at it is IDE is good for coding if you're doing, but for everything else, including coding, I'm able to use the CLI because it has access to the underlying tools and commands that I need.
Brilliant. Good to know. I didn't even really know that there was a Q CLI, so I feel like I've learned something new.
Yes, yeah. So the way you log in is fairly straightforward. Well, you have to have Q installed, but so I'm already at my in my project. You type in just Q chat. So it's given me. So I've logged into essentially my, and it's telling me which model that I'm using right now. And we released a recent feature where you can select the model as well.
I didn't even realize that. That's so cool.
Yeah, if you type in model here, it gives you only select model. So let's say if you wanted to use Claude 4 for Sonnet, you could use that as well. But I'll use the existing one.
So, but this doesn't affect the price that you pay for Q Dev, whatever. Brilliant.
No, this doesn't. Yeah, so this is the same. So let's say I wanted to, so we were talking earlier about looking at the code base, right? To say, okay, we need to analyze the code base that we want to migrate. So let me ask Claude here. I could do the exact same thing that I did on the Q chat. So I want to migrate our game application. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, let me just give you the same example that I provided just to show that it's doing this, what it's doing. What did I ask before?
Explain the project.
Yeah, explain to me what this project is about and how it's structured.
So slightly different, but I used to work with so many people who were, oh, is this faster? Yeah, this is much faster, right?
Yeah, because it's not going to the IDE workflow and the plugins. It's going directly into.
Oh my God.
So yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just say there used to be some people that I used to work with who refused to they just you could get rid of their keyboard, their mouse, and they would be happy. Like they just wanted to do everything through command, and so I feel like they would love this kind of access.
Exactly, yeah. And I like it too. I use this more than I use the IDE these days, I find myself.
Yeah, I didn't even realize. Going to move on to that, definitely. Okay, yeah. So
yeah, so let's say, so we're moving into I'm a developer. I've been asked to migrate from Java to Rust, and I want to understand what that looks like. So first I need to understand the code base. So I'll say I want to.
Video, just so you know, your screen dropped again.
Oh, thanks.
We're just making sure the audience is keeping them on their toes, jumping between. Someone commented using Amazon Q to increase productivity. Yes, exactly. That's what we are doing today. Okay. There we go. Back on it.
Thank you. And do let me know, because I'm not seeing the screen here.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I'll keep you posted.
You do see it? Yeah. So let's say I want to migrate our game application from Java to Rust. Can you help me understand the structure of our Java application? First, I think we already did this, but I'm going to also add to it what key components should I focus on? Migration. So this is something typically when I'm doing it manually, I would have to go through the structure, I have to understand what it does, and then I have to come up with a plan for my team.
Right.
We'll let it finish. So it's telling me to get started, so to give me some recommendation to examine the game controller, and we'll get into that in a bit. And it's understood that that's where the core game logic is, and then it's telling me to go into a word list class, which is where the words are managed. This will give you the essential functionality to implement Rust before moving to the web interface components. So I'll go back here. So it's explained to me what it's done here. It's told me what the key components are. That's what I asked it to do. So it's told me where the game logic is, and it's an MVC framework. So it's using, this is where the so this is the game controller as a class, and then word list management is implemented in this class. And this is what it also explains to me what it does. It's storing words for, for the random words that it's selecting. And then it has a web interface, and it has game rules, and here's the rules are implemented in this way. And it's given me some information about what the migration focus that it thinks I should be doing. So it's saying move the core game logic first, and then the web framework selection. So it's given me some examples of from Spring Boot for Rust, you have to be using either Rocket or Active Web. And it's giving me a bunch of different, it's also explaining how the data structures could be migrated and the testing framework. Okay. So it's giving me an entire list of things within a couple of seconds on where I could get started.
Yeah.
So now let me create that into I need to create, so I like what I'm seeing here. Create a transformation, say markup file, the documents, the migration of our keyword game. Rust. I also wanted to ask, I'm going to ask it to, the file should cover the conceptual mapping.
Okay.
And this is where the concepts, this was the second phase where I asked it, it would do the conceptual mapping between Java and Rust. Any key architectural changes I need to make. And also I want to know, because I'm new to Rust, I need to know what the potential challenges are. So I'm going to ask that. And this is really important when you're working with a new language to understand what the challenges are. And then I'll say, can you generate this? I don't want to read it here, so can you generate this document file for me?
That's a good point. You don't want to spit it. You want to get to have this. And especially, like you're saying, if this was happening in a real life scenario with a business, you need to have this stuff documented, right? You need to explain, especially if you have a production application, that this is the process we're going to do. And this is why, these are the things to note, because maybe you don't want Q to do the whole thing. Maybe you just want to prepare for it. Or if you want to follow the journey Q does, I feel like I've caught myself recently just saying, hey, Q, fix this. And then suddenly I'm like, what has happened? And I do not understand my, my process and what's happening.
Exactly. And I'm going to share my full screen so you can see.
Yeah, if I bring, there you go, bring that down.
Yeah, so I'm going to show you what it's doing.
Perfect.
So it's still generating the document here. So it's saying, I'll create a comprehensive transformation file document, if you can see that migrates here. And so it's thinking. While it's doing that, I will share, let's see, and I need to trust, so it's going to be. And I can see what where the trust factor with this comes into play for me is that it tells me exactly what it's looking at and what it's thinking and what it's doing as it's doing it, rather than just giving me the output.
Yes.
So it's giving me some information. So let's see. Did it create what's this? So would you like me to explain anything? So this document provides, let me see if this is.
Where's it drop?
File in your project directory. So it's created this transformation file in the project.
Oh, yeah, I see it's open. Yeah.
Yeah. And let's look at what it's doing. I'm going to preview this so it's a little bit easier. So this is really great. So it's essentially created the migration documentation for me. And this would take me months to write or weeks to write. So it's created, and what it's doing here, I'll just go over this quickly. It's doing a conceptual mapping. This is what we talked about in the original diagram, the process that it does. So it's not just looking at syntax to syntax. Oh, sorry about that.
It's not you. Something is wrong. And the audience, they're bearing with us. They know that we would never do this by choice.
Thanks. Yeah, so this is where we're going into this. So it's doing the concept. So it's saying classes, the equivalent of classes in Java is Rust. It's in Rust is structs, and it explains things to me exactly what it's trying to do in terms of the different concepts. And it also looks at the framework. So moving from framework, Spring Boot to ActiveX, and it gives me, say, for testing, it's saying the JUnit, I can use a built-in test framework, and it also helps me with. I asked for architectural framework in terms of, because our Java application uses an MVC style architecture, and it's saying for Rust, so from that you could go into a Rust web framework with handlers and services. So I'm able to visualize what my architecture looks like here, which is really incredible, I think, in terms of being able to do that quickly. And what I love about this is that it also gives you some logic implementation with sample examples. So it gives you, so if you're thinking about how do I do this, it gives you, it's not just theoretically telling you what to do, it's also giving you some example of, okay, here's the approach that you could take. And same with, and it's looked, because it's run through our structure code base, it's able to show, what it would be doing.
Yeah.
So I'll go through this. So, and then this I find really useful is the potential challenges and solution. So, and this is key. As I was learning about Rust, and Rust is new to me, and I'm learning how to use it. So to be able to understand how memory management works, which is what makes it more performant, it's telling me what the challenge is. Moving from garbage collected. So Java uses something called garbage collection, where I'll get into it later. But the concept here is more that Rust uses a very different model in how it does memory management. And this is where it's a difficult thing to learn, and it's harder for a developer to develop in, because Java is a lot easier to develop in for me personally. So, but it's able to tell me kind of what to look out for, similar to session management and what the testing strategy could be like. And then it's giving me an implementation roadmap. And this is more, okay, here's how it's split it up into multiple phases to say, here's, change this, and then the technology stack recommendation that it's provided. So to me, yeah, I think this is great that I have a pretty good idea within a few minutes of us looking at this to understand what I'm supposed to be doing. So what I'm going to ask for it to do is, it's save that file. I'm going to just now say, okay, can you create a transformation plan for me? So I understand it sort of at a high level what needs to happen. So let's say.
And for a time check, we've got about 15 minutes left.
Oh, yeah.
Just I just imagine a scenario where someone's gotten a new job and don't do this, guys, just FYI, but they've said on their CV, like, I know Rust, and then they get there and they're like, oh no, I only know this. And it's like, they could use something like Q to help understand it. Or if there's a new business mandate to kind of try new things, like the CloudFormation Terraform example that there I have. But I'm planning on doing maybe an episode next quarter about kind of using this to help optimize some other bits with Q, I think. And we also need to remember, stick around to the end, because we're going to have three things to talk about. One is a super secret LinkedIn group that you'll only get to find out if you stay to the end. Two, we'll have Richard's summary, and Vidya is going to come back on for a whole other series with me on a different channel. So make sure you stick around to the end so we can talk about that. All right, so we're getting it to create this transformation plan.
Yeah, and I have a sample here that I will, while it's doing that, let me open that I prepared for. In case we know. So this is so this is what I've asked it to. I just created it yesterday. I've asked it to create this transformation plan for me. And this is a migration overview. It gives me, sorry for the multiple
No, you're good. You're good.
I realize that when someone else is looking at it, might not be the easiest to look at.
When you're tuned in, it's like, it's fine. I understand.
Yeah,
It's like when someone has like 1,000 tabs, you're like, it's fine. I know what's going on.
exactly. Yeah. So it's just giving me the steps on what it's going to do. And I've asked it to do this, right? And it's also telling me how it's going to create a structure that looks like this. That it told me in the original plan, and it's actually created this directory structure, and it's telling me that it's going to implement the core domain models, and it's prioritized certain things for me. And again, I can accept it or not accept it, and because of the CLI agent, I can talk to it and I can refine this. But essentially, this is the overall step. I know exactly what's going to happen when I ask it to continue with it. It's also giving me some unit tests of what it thinks I should be looking at, and some integration tests as well, and performance tests, and some risks. So to me, and it also gives me how to validate it. It's really important when you're transforming code that you're always validating at the end. That's a fast feedback loop. And there's also what the rollback plan is if it doesn't work. So I created it here, but this is the same thing. So what I'll do is now, just in the interest of time, I'll go back to my CLI, and let's start doing this. So I have, so let me start with, so I'm going to just, based on the plan, it told me to just, I want to just move a specific component for a proof of concept for this demo.
Okay.
So now, transformation.
A safe way of doing it. I like it.
Like start by migrating a small component. We can see the whole screen.
Yeah. We're good.
So Rust is a proof of concept. So because this is something I want to be able to show my team.
Oh, classic. It's moved down. Finish typing and then we'll reshare the screen.
Yeah, let me.
Yeah, chat. Let us know what's the funniest technical error you've had in a while. The days of early lockdown, people used to accidentally leave their microphones on or cameras on. They still like haunt me to this day. I wear headphones. I'm always worried I keep running back and forth and saying like, have I gone on mute?
Yes. So here it's going to run through this, and it's going to. So what it's saying here is that first I need to understand, word selection implemented, and I don't have access, but I'll create a Rust implementation based on the information that's there. So let me. It's thinking through it. So let me, I'll go through while it's running that. In the interest of time, I'm going to show you what I did yesterday when I ran this.
Okay.
Created let me close some of these windows. What it's done here, it's created a folder here called Rust Proof of Concept. And it created this as a source, and it told me in that file that we looked at earlier how it's going to structure it. So it's created a source repository with a repository, and it's created a word list. This is the main class that we have.
Oh yeah.
It created the service that's required for it, and tests. It's able to generate some tests. So if I go into the README, it's also created a README for me on what it does and how it creates it. So I'll go into this in a bit. It's essentially telling me what it's doing here, what you're seeing on the right-hand side. It's created these projects, and let's see.
Okay.
Sorry, let me go in here. Yeah. So it's able to. So I will just run through this in terms of what it's done before. So this is this was generated by Q Dev on the CLI in terms of this repository that it's able to create. And I'll show you a quick example of what it's done. So let me use a word list and how this optimizes code refactoring. So word list is a class that we have here, and we have a similar class within our. I'm going to open it in a.
Okay.
So this is the original class that you're seeing on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
And we talked about memory management, and that's one of the key areas where Rust shines. So what it's done here is, I'll give you an example. So it's created, this is the word list, and this is a class, and it's created this entire class automatically. It's generated that. And I think it said the class transforms into structs. And so it's able to create a struct, Rust struct equivalent for a Java class. And with memory management, let me see if I can find an example here. So one of the things that Rust does is it uses let me see if I can find a simple example here. It uses, so let's say in this example, it's using get last word. So the way Java works here, and why this helps with optimization, is that, so the way Java works is that it stores your the string. Let's say last word is a string. You've got something in there. It stores it in memory, and it allows, and Java's garbage collection decides when it's going to release that memory. And that word, that string, can be accessed from anywhere else within this class. And the way Rust works is it uses a self. So this particular type of it's a construct that it has, that where it knows exactly, it's got an ownership model. So this it automatically understands that this is a word that's being, it's saving a current word, so in this case last word, and it's able to create it knows exactly, Rust knows exactly who owns this string and for how long, and the memory is freed as soon as the ownership goes out of scope. So it's not storing that. So that's just a very simple example of why Rust is a little bit more performative than Java. So there's no runtime garbage collection here. It's done at compile time, and it has better resource management, and it's better. It enforces better memory safety at the compiler.
Yeah.
So it eliminates sort of that garbage collection and memory errors that you could find in Java. It's not saying that it happens all the time, but it could have. So that's an example of what it's done for me without me having to implement it. I'm just going to put it side by side. So just give you an example of how it's able to create this function on its own, and also understand that the paradigm with Rust is different in terms of how it does memory management.
That is so helpful to know. Like obviously everyone use always the best code platform for your application, but in this conversion, it's kind of made something a little bit more optimized. And then a lot of what we talk about with optimization, I mean, the show is AWS Optimization. It doesn't have to be a direct, like I've saved $1 or I've saved X amount of savings, but the more efficient your code is, the better it will run, the faster it will run, the less resources you need. It's like a trickle down effect from this kind of thing. So we've got about 5-ish more minutes before we need to wrap up. Anything else you want to showcase on the demo /
so in the demo, so I could run through this quickly, but essentially what I've also done is that I asked it to create recommended testing plan, and it created that for me before. Do
you want to share your screen back up?
Oh, is it?
Don't worry, it's all good. All right.
So it asked it to create a test plan for me, and at first it started with unit tests, and I'll go into it. You can see in the left-hand side, and then it also created integration tests. So the testing is really important, and the validation is important when you're doing any sort of migration like this. So this is a very simple example just to show you what it was able to do. So it was able to create, I won't go through all of this, but it was able to understand what tests I have within my Java application, and it was able to kind of replicate that. So one of the key parts of refactoring is that you're not changing functionality. So you're making sure that the functionality is same. You need to have comprehensive testing. So it was able to do that. It was able to create the equivalent of a POM file to understand what packages and dependencies I need here. So what I'll do is, the key here is, we were saying, oh, this is going to be helpful, but how do I know whether or not, so I validated this already, and I'm not going to run through this because it'll take a bit of time, but what I wanted to do is also understand how do I know that it is actually performative, right? To show performance.
Right.
And you can ask, in the CLI to create a performance, but I've already done this with some benchmark.
Oh, yeah, cool.
So it was able to create, you know what? Let me open up the full application that it created that I ran. So this is a Java application this is a proof of concept, but I actually created a full application for it to run last week in preparation. So it was able to, and I ran the performance benchmarks, and it asked it to create a performance test for me, and it created benchmark, and it also explained to me what it was doing while it was doing it. And let me just quickly show you the summary of the analysis here. So it created this benchmark where it essentially ran through the different, it ran through these endpoints. So it does a comparison between the homepage, the game endpoint, which is, you can see where it's what it's calling, and it's providing a detailed analysis. So what it did was I can show you the performance. What it's doing is, let me see if I can, so this is what it's doing. It created 10 concurrent instances, and then it hit, and it hit each application, both the Java and Rust application, 1,000 requests, and it came back with very specific examples of what it's done for the Java and for each of these endpoints in Rust, and the summary is what you're seeing here. And what it found was that it essentially was approximately Rust was 3 to 4 times. It was able to handle 3 to 4 times more traffic on the same hardware, obviously, because it's running on my machine, as you would expect. So you're able to see very quickly, run this application. I ran the test, I validated it, and just applied to, so it wasn't all easy. There were some issues with the tests it generated, so I had to fix it. So, but then when I did run it, it did come back with these test results saying how much Rust was able to handle in terms of requests. It's a very simple benchmark compared to the Java requests. So, and I was able to eventually run the whole application. And this is the Rust application that I was playing with before. So let me...
Oh, so it already sneaks it over.
Yeah, and I'll show you our... And this was what we were playing with, our Java application. And so this is our Rust application.
But it's the same.
Do you want to try? Do you want to guess?
Steph. No, 6 letter.
Okay.
I'm too stressed. You know what? We're almost at time anyway. It's all good. Let me.
So it's and you can see
but amazing.
So it's it gives me what it's doing here.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for taking through that. I encourage everyone to go and check out Q Developer, try it out, try and do it through refactor your code. Obviously, if you do try it out, you've got to let me know. So cost optimization at amazon.com or in the comments of the video. Would love to see what you're doing. Before we finish, of course, we have our secret Richard summary. Let's bring that up. So Q Developer optimizes your development life cycles. It's like having your own video working alongside you. Would love that. Map out your transformation plan. Q Dev shows how it's working while providing the output, which is very handy. And join the LinkedIn group. Yes, please. Let me throw that up right now. So we have made a LinkedIn group for our department. So Vidya and I work in the same department. So does Secret Richard, so does Savannah. So we want to make sure that you guys see that. So join this LinkedIn group down there so that you can stay up to date with all of our amazing announcements. And the very last thing to say is Monday, the 21st of July, for the consecutive Mondays for 5 weeks to the 18th of August, Vidya and I are doing a live stream on the T&C channel, the Training and Certification channel. Go over there, subscribe now so that you can stay up to date with all of that announcements. But we're going to be focusing on Q Developer for those 5 weeks and showing all of the power it has. So go and check this out. Also, make sure that you subscribe on this channel to stay up to date with all the cool stuff. We are back next week with the last episode of the series where we have Trainline coming on, a customer story. So make sure you remind yourself, put yourself in the diary to come back for that. Vidya, thank you so much for joining. This has been Keys to AWS Optimization. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you.